So you mentioned something in there about victim mindset, which I'm just going to call out. Anyone who's listened to the show for a long time knows that like that is something that I think separates the winners from the losers. The minute you get rid of victim mindset and you just say, if it's going to be, it's up to me. I take 100% responsibility for everything in my life. Maybe I can't control everything that happens to me, but I control the way I react to it. Right. I love to hear, I mean, just because I know you, like 8 months ago, you had a moment where you were having a little bit of a tough time, right? You're a little bit stressed out. You had some things not going the way that you wanted, but you manned up. I remember having a conversation with you where you just like the whole time you could tell you were a little bit frustrated with different things that were going on, but you're like, you know what? I'm changing my mindset. Hey, you know what? That's not me anymore. I'm getting rid of that person that Daniel was, and I'm becoming this new person, and that's not going to bother me anymore. You kept saying that stuff over and over, and it was interesting to see it from the outside. I would love for you to just kind of walk through that experience, and how would you tell people, somebody listening that's like, I don't know what you're talking about, or I don't know how to implement that in my life.
Well, it's funny we're talking about this because I just had this conversation with a client of mine. It's under pressure, under stress, the real you comes out at that moment. Your instinctive behaviors. And what I mean by that is I want to give you the analogy of, just imagine I have an orange in my hand and I squeeze that orange. What's going to come out? Orange juice. Well, if I have an apple in my other hand and I squeeze it, what's going to come out? Well, apple juice. Well, what comes out of you when you're squeezed? What comes out of Daniel when you're squeezed? And even though initially, instinctively, you want to get upset, you want to get a thing, you have to catch yourself and reprogram at that moment, recondition that story that you're telling yourself. And so many of us, I've seen it, we get squeezed like that orange, and instead of orange juice coming out, crap comes out. That toxic, rotted orange juice at the very, very bottom, that's deep, 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 deep down inside in your core beliefs and your value system, comes out. But it needs to get out. And the only way it's going to get out is through those hardships and those challenges. And I just learned that when those moments come, you got to catch yourself and you got to change that dialogue and say, I am going to overcome this. I'm going to do this. But instinctively, what's the first thing we do? Oh, why is this happening to me? Oh, man, nothing goes right for me. Oh, it's Steve's fault. It's Marty's fault. It's Rick's fault. It's everybody's fault but your own. And we start sabotaging ourselves. Oh, I'm no good. I'm not good enough. And we play this dialogue over and over and over. And then, but the thing is, is think about this. We both know that our words manifest our life. And the more you say you can't, the more you say you can't do this, you're not good enough, the more you're not going to be, and the more you're pushing that blessing, that manifestation away from you. Instead of saying, maybe I don't really believe it 100%, or I'm mad, I'm frustrated, but I'm an overcomer. I'm going to make it happen. I can do this. I'm better than this. And that time was dark because, I mean, 47 years old and crawling to the toilet, man, that's humbling. That checks your ego and your pride real quick.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but that's the thing, like having the humility and I think that's ego is the biggest thing that I think hurts people in business and in life. Having this big ego, that's not me. Like that, I can't believe that. Like you see people with it. I know you and I both see it. Like the minute somebody has a big overinflated ego, like nothing good is going to come from that. And I think having a humbling experience once in a while can be really good because it shows us like, how do we deal with that? Right. And you made it through. You were down, you were down maybe for like a week, two, then you started to come back up. And then now we talk about it, right? It becomes content and it becomes a growth experience, which is really all life is. Like there's no, I'll get your feedback on this. I think we probably feel the same way, but there's no like right and wrong. There's no fail or succeed. It is, you're here. And if you want to get there, you need to try things. Sometimes they're not going to work. Sometimes they are, but it doesn't matter because you have to try things. You're never going to be perfect. You're never going to get it 100% correct. Like the path to success is through failure, not in the opposite direction of it.
I think it's persistence here. I was talking about the script chapter in persistence. It's really just not giving up, even though we have this image of ourselves of what we think it looks like. And we think every day we're supposed to wake up and we're supposed to do strides, like miles and miles of success every day. And that's not what success really is. Some days you're going to go a foot. Sometimes you're going to go just one step, but there's days you're going to go a mile. But the key is that realizing that those days that you really have those miles to really reflect back and say, wow, thank you, God. And like Monday, it was just one of those days. And it was a day, it was steps, baby steps that I felt like I was taking, but I was still going forward. And so many times we don't take notice of those steps that are so small, but they're so significant because those moments that you don't give up, like in November when it really just stunk, man. It really checked your character, it checked your heart. And it seemed that everything that was coming at you, but it's those very challenges that come like that. What we're talking about 8 months ago is that that's either you pass the test, that's the test for the next level. And if I would have whined and complained and not still had to sell the event that we had to sell for Sticker Shock in March, then how can I be trusted with more? I think back of the I always talk about this quote every once in a while by Peter Parker, right? From Spider-Man. His grandma says, with great power comes great responsibility. We all want the power, but we don't want the responsibility. And sometimes that's just going forward of being that great leader for yourself. And people see that. And many people in business, they can't even lead themselves because right away they fall into that self-pity and that sorrow and, oh man, woe's me. And then guess what? They start to blame others and they just give up. Think about how many podcasts start and they don't even make it a 10 episodes.
Right. That's, I mean, they don't, that's one of like the biggest stats. But I mean, podcast is one, but so is anyone in business, right? One of my clients and I were talking about this earlier today. They like how many Facebook groups get started, they're starting to build a little momentum, and then 2 months in, the guy quits. How many like email lists, how many businesses, how many abandoned businesses are there? Like, it's crazy to think about how many people start. And the thing is that like when you're starting, you're like a seed, right? And you're pushing out a little root over here and you're pushing out a little root over here. And like it's painful and it's hard and you're moving millimeters at a time. But if you give up, you're never going to reach there. But it's so much easier just to be like, oh yeah, that stuff doesn't work. Digital marketing, that doesn't work. Speaking, that doesn't work. It's easier to tell yourself that story. You touched on this earlier. The story that you told yourself was what allowed you to start changing who you were. And that is the number one thing that you can do that I've found. Like, I tell people that all the time. I'm like, if you see yourself, not having the response that you want, tell yourself a different story. And you're not going to believe it at first, but you keep telling it over and over and over, and you live your story. I mean, it's what you did at the very beginning, right? It's what I did at the start of my business. I had no business putting on events, none. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to speak on stage. I didn't know how to sell from stage. I didn't know any of it. But I said, that's who I want to be. That's who I am. That's who I am. That's who I am. There was a Tony Robbins video that I just watched like every day. It's like 15 minutes. And it was like, change who you are, change your belief structure.
That's true though. And the thing is, people, they think it's going to be a hocus pocus, and no, you have to put in the reps. You have to put in the reps. And something that I'm a big affirmations, positive self-talk guy. I'm a big I am, because whatever you say after I am, you start to embody that. And it's something that even my clients say, oh, Daniel, you don't have to do affirmations anymore. You're good. I'm like, no, like every single day, every single month, every single year, it's a new Daniel. So guess what? I mastered the old affirmations. And then me and you had this conversation, right? I am a multimillionaire. I am making 100 million this year. Like you gotta dream big. And it doesn't make sense to your mind because you've never said that. But once you start talking about it, guess what? Next thing you know, that next level of business comes in, that next level client comes in. And next thing you know, I remember I was scared to even charge $500 for 3 months of coaching. Now you're charging 5,000 for 3 months. And it's like, wow, like how did that happen? Because you grow into that person, but you got to tell yourself that story. You have to believe that story for yourself. And that's exactly what I did when those applications were going through and speaking, when it was just dry. And you got to understand that everything is for a season. Life comes to you in increments. However you want to see that, right? If you're a seasons person, life comes to you in increments. And when you pass and you do good in that increment, okay, you're ready for more. Or that season, right? It's not as successful as you want, but you're like, thank you, God, for that business that I have. And when you do that, okay, Steve's ready. Daniel's ready for, right? You're at level 5. It's time for level 6. But this is a key that most people mess up. Levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's always easy, right? Like a video game. But then you get to level 5 and 6, and all of a sudden, like, oh, the targets get faster. Donkey Kong, the barrels come down quicker. And that's the same thing in business. From one level to the next, I believe that from level 1 to 5, it's kind of easy to say. But when you go from level 6 to 7, it's like 1 to 5 altogether. And it requires more of you as a human being, as a business owner. And you got to be able to handle the capacity. You got to create the capacity for that. And most people, they don't do it, and they self-sabotage themselves at that point.
I mean, the video game analogy is really, really good because I think in the beginning, right, you're learning how to take steps. You're like following the tutorial and like figuring out exactly like what does what, but there's no reward, right? Oh, the reward is, oh, you kind of get to the next level. But by the time you get to the end, the rewards start to get a lot bigger. And it's the same in business. Like once you master and you have the capacity, if somebody would have thrown me into where I am right now 5 years ago, there's no way I would have been able to handle it, right? I would have lost my mind. I would have gotten stressed out. I probably would have broke down.
I still lose my mind.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, that's just not going to work. So anyone who gets started and says, I want to get there right away. Cool. Like I just tell people, enjoy the journey. Like you have to master each piece and get going. And you can do it a little bit faster, but enjoy the journey because it's at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. You're going to be successful as long as you keep at it. Are you looking to scale your business but trying to figure out how to get your message across? Well, go to storyselling.how to grab my free course that will show you how to discover everything that you need to build your business through stories. These stories work whether it's in social media, email, or public speaking. There are 5 core stories that you'll learn. You'll be able to use all of them by the time you're done with this course. Again, that is storyselling.how. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to tune in next time.